The dust hung heavy in the air of Millbrook's town square that September afternoon. The sun beat down mercilessly on the wooden platform where the auctioneer's voice carried across the gathered crowd. Sarah May clutched her newborn son closer to her chest, feeling the dampness still staining her simple cotton dress. The bleeding had barely stopped, and her legs shook beneath her as she knelt on the rough planks. "What am I bid for this young woman and her child?" The auctioneer called out, his voice cutting through the murmur of voices. "She's strong, good for housework and field labor. The baby won't be much trouble." Sarah May kept her eyes fixed on the wooden boards beneath her knees. The shame burned hotter than the afternoon sun. 3 days ago, she had been a free woman working at the boarding house. 3 days ago, her husband Thomas had been alive, working the small plot of land they rented outside town. 3 days ago, she had gone into labor believing her child would be born into a world of possibility. Then the fever took Thomas in a single night. The doctor's bills came due. The landlord demanded his rent, and the law in this territory was clear. A woman with debts and no means to pay could be sold to settle them, even a woman who had just given birth. The crowd below shifted and whispered. Sarah May caught glimpses of faces, some curious, some calculating, some turning away in discomfort. She recognized Mrs. Henderson from the general store, and Pastor Williams from the church where she and Thomas had wed just 8 months before. None of them met her eyes. $50, called out a voice from the left side of the crowd. Sarah May's stomach lurched. She knew that voice. It belonged to Jeremiah Cock, who ran the saloon and brothel on the edge of town. She had seen the hollow-eyed women who worked for him, had heard the stories whispered by the other boarding house girls. $50. Bid, the auctioneer confirmed. Do I hear 60? The baby stirred in her arms, making soft mewing sounds. Sarah May looked down at his tiny face, red and wrinkled, his eyes squeezed shut against the harsh light. She had named him David, after Thomas's father. Now she wondered if she would ever have the right to call him by name again. $100. The voice came from the back of the crowd, deep and steady. Sarah May looked up, searching for its source. The sun created a halo of light behind the gathered townspeople, making it hard to see clearly. But she could make out a tall figure in a brown coat and hat, standing apart from the others. 100 from the gentleman in back. The auctioneer called, clearly pleased. This was more than anyone had expected for a woman in Sarah May's condition. Do I hear 120? Jeremiah Cock spat into the dust. 120, he called, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. 150 came the calm response. From the back. Sarah May craned her neck, trying to get a better look at the man who was bidding against Cock. All she could see was the outline of broad shoulders and a hat tilted low over his face. Something about his posture, the way he stood with his hands clasped behind his back, patient and unmoved by the tension of the auction, made her breathing slow just slightly. 150 bid. The auctioneer's gavel pointed toward the back of the crowd. Do I hear 170? Cock looked around the crowd, his face flushed with anger. Everyone knew he expected to win this auction without much competition. Sarah May was young, reasonably pretty, despite her current state, and would bring him good money once she recovered from childbirth. 200, Cock called out, his voice sharp with irritation. The crowd murmured. $200 was serious money, more than most men in Millbrook made in 6 months. 250, came the steady voice from the back. Without hesitation, now people began turning to look at the mysterious bidder. Sarah May saw heads swiveling, heard whispered questions. Who was this man willing to pay so much, and why? Cock's face had gone from red to purple. He looked around desperately, as if seeking support from the crowd, but the other men avoided his gaze. 250 was beyond what most of them could afford, and beyond what they thought any woman, even one with a child, was worth as an indentured servant. Going once, the auctioneer called. Going twice. Cock opened his mouth as if to bid again, then seemed to think better of it. He spat again and pushed through the crowd, disappearing around the corner of the bank building. Sold to the gentleman in back for $250. The crowd began to disperse, people drifting away to return to their daily business. Sarah May watched as her purchaser made his way forward through the thinning group of townspeople. As he drew closer, she could see him more clearly. He was tall and lean, with dark hair showing beneath his brown hat. His clothes were well made, but practical, the kind worn by a man who worked with his hands but had money enough for quality goods. There was something weathered about his face, lines around his eyes that spoke of long days in the sun and wind. But his expression was gentle as he approached the platform. "Ma'am," he said, touching the brim of his hat. His voice was the same, calm, deep tone she had heard during the bidding. "My name is Daniel Morrison. I own the Double M Ranch about 10 miles north of here." Sarah May struggled to find her voice. I'm Sarah May Patterson. This is my son, David." Daniel Morrison nodded, studying her face with kind but serious eyes. "Mrs. Patterson, I want you to understand something right from the start. I didn't buy you to work you to death or take advantage of your situation. I have a proposition for you, but first, let's get you somewhere more comfortable." You look like you need rest and a good meal." He helped her to her feet, steadying her when her legs wobbled. The baby had fallen asleep in her arms, exhausted by the heat and commotion. "My wagon's just over there," Daniel said, pointing to a sturdy vehicle hitched to 2 brown horses. "I've got blankets in the back, and my housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, is waiting at the ranch with soup and clean clothes." As they walked slowly toward the wagon, Sarah May found the courage to ask, "Mr. Morrison, why did you pay so much for me? I mean, I'm grateful, but I don't understand." Daniel was quiet for a long moment as he helped her up onto the wagon seat. "My wife died 2 years ago," he said finally, climbing up beside her. "We never had children. The ranch is doing well, but it's a lonely place for one man. I heard about your situation and thought maybe we could help each other." "Help each other how?" Sarah May asked as Daniel clicked to the horses and they began moving out of town. "I need someone to manage my household," Daniel explained. "Mrs. Chen does the cooking and heavy cleaning, but I need someone to handle correspondence, keep the books, manage supplies, someone I can trust. In return, you and your son would have a home, good food, and safety. After 5 years, the term of your indenture, you'd be free to stay on as a paid employee, or leave with enough money to start fresh wherever you choose." Sarah May stared at him. "You're offering me a job. Not what I expected." "What did you expect?" She looked down at baby David, sleeping peacefully despite the wagon's gentle rocking. I was afraid you might want me to be your wife. Or worse." Daniel's hands tightened slightly on the reins. "Mrs. Patterson, you've just lost your husband and given birth. The last thing you need is more upheaval in your life. What I'm offering is stability, respect, and time to heal. Nothing more, nothing less." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the town of Millbrook falling away behind them. The landscape opened up into rolling hills dotted with cattle and the occasional farmhouse. The air smelled of grass and wildflowers, clean and fresh. After the dust and tension of the town square, "Why did you really buy me, Mr. Morrison?" Sarah May asked softly. The truth this time. Daniel was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally he said, "I was 13 when my own mother was sold to pay my father's debts. I never saw her again. When I heard what was happening to you, well, I suppose I wanted to give someone the chance I wish my mother had been given." Tears pricked Sarah May's eyes, the first tears she had allowed herself since Thomas died. "I don't know how to thank you." "You can thank me by helping me build something good at the Double M," Daniel said. "A place where people can heal and start over. A place where a boy like David can grow up free." As the sun began to set behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Sarah May felt something she hadn't experienced in days: hope. The wagon rolled on toward the horizon, carrying them away from the shame and desperation of the auction block and toward a future neither of them could fully imagine yet. But for the first time since Thomas died, Sarah May believed that future might be worth living.